Tales from behind bars, eh? Ooh. Can you hear me, Andy?
Yeah, I can hear you. All right.
Splendid.
Hey, Keaton, all right. Yeah. So I'm assuming we're just going to go through, because there's obviously different stints here. So like I'm assuming the stories are kind of like spread across.
What? Well, obviously, Ronnie was, imprisoned a lot sooner than I was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's got the tales more than me, if that's what you mean. But I think I was in 3 different nicks. I think. So one was called Weymouth, Armley in Leeds, and Liverpool.
Mm. So what was the reasoning for being like moved around?
Well, I'm going to tell you that in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, I learned a life lesson today.
All right.
Which was that if you've got your heart set on pasta, you should, first of all, and certainly before you boil all the water, is find out if you've got any pasta.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's usually a good idea. Yeah.
It is, yeah. I actually did have just about enough, but it must have been pretty. It must have been pretty aged. It seemed to take a long time to.
As long as it tasted all right, that's the main thing.
Yeah, it was all right in the end. Yeah, it's all right in the end.
Whilst we're waiting for Ronnie to join us, there's 2 questions that have come up like during the week that I thought were both kind of interesting for us to mention. So first one, it would be like I'd appreciate, I suppose, Ronnie's answer on it because it ties in with the whole vegan education thing. And that's kind of, I suppose, focused around this idea that it's very easy to kind of just go and hand out leaflets or whatever. But for many of the people that have tried to set up their own grassroots groups, it's actually far more complicated setting up like bank accounts and getting public liability insurance and all this sort of stuff. And I just wondered whether that was something that might put people off.
Well, it depends. I mean, like if you're doing...
people like you and me, Roger, just think, well, we'll just grab like a pasting table and we'll just go and stand somewhere until someone tells us to clear off, right? Whereas a lot of people don't think that way.
Well, that's the way to think, though.
I know, but a lot of these people, I suppose, through their various kind of like careers or whatever, have gone through all these like safeguarding routes. And so they're so petrified about being sued about the smallest things that they are very focused on things like insurance.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, it's very rarely. In all the times I've set up tables, and I've done it hundreds and hundreds of times over the years, I think there's probably only 3 times I've been asked to move on, and that wasn't with any threat of prosecution or anything like that. It just said,
What about in terms, Ronnie, of like an accident happening on your stall or anything like that?
Nothing's ever been said about that. Okay. Nothing's ever been said.
It's never happened for me either. I mean, there's never been a situation that I've been involved in any form of outreach where someone's made like some sort of insurance claim or there's been a lack of insurance and so there's been a problem. It's never been a thing, but it's just something that I've heard a number of people mention.
Well, I think sometimes if you're doing it stalls, see, I do stalls at community events like dog rescue. Dog rescue events.
I'm assuming in those sort of situations, the event's already got insurance, right?
Sometimes they have, but sometimes they require the stall holders to have public liability insurance. So we have got public liability insurance.
Yeah.
It's a policy that costs £80 a year, but we kind of share it with another group. So.
It's a lot cheaper over in Britain because it's about €350.
Really?
Yes.
Wow,
yes.
That's a considerable difference.
Yeah, it's a policy for community organisations, and it's acceptable. They always accept the policy when I send it in. They want to see the sort of documentation, I just email it to the organisers. And normally, not everyone asks for it, but they do quite often. So that's it. The number of events we do, community events we do, makes it worthwhile getting it. To be honest. But in the street,
had a substantial amount in Dublin when we had the contract with Temple Bar Square, which is obviously, you know, it's a real big tourist area. I think we had to have 11 million euros worth of insurance.
Oh, wow.
And I think they said something like if you had one employee, which we didn't, obviously, you'd have to have something like 23 million euros worth of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ours
in case you accidentally destroy a cruise ship.
I know. I don't know what kind of injury someone could have to merit that sort of damages. But no, I mean, I've never, even before, like we started doing the community events, and I used to do street stalls all over the place, and never had any of that kind of insurance. And I think the important thing is to set the stall up on sort of council-owned land. If you do it like on privately owned land, you'll very quickly get moved on. Like quite a lot of the shopping malls are privately owned. Even some of the outdoor ones are as well. So you've kind of got to be in my nearest town, in the town centre. Part of it is belongs to the council, but an even bigger part is privately owned. So you can't set up a stall there unless you get permission of the company that runs that area, that shopping area.
Right.
And there are organisations that do. I mean, for instance, Animals Asia, they had 3 collections in that area during the summer because they got permission of the company that runs that runs the shopping area to do that. Whether we haven't tried to do that for a vegan group, whether they'd give us permission to do so, I kind of don't know. But we would set a stall up in the sort of public area, in the council owned area. That's where we kind of have done. But I mean, locally in our local area, I find it's more. It's better to do stalls at community events because there's bigger footfall. We don't have a huge amount of footfall in our town centre, really, to be honest.
Yeah.
But in some
I suppose it
towns,
makes sense as well in the sense that these kind of already arranged and already organised events have already thought about things like toilet facilities and all of that kind of stuff. So it's more easy for you to just kind of turn up and do your thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about like we have a lot of local carnivals because there's some of the villages have carnivals. This we cover 3 towns that are very close together. They all have carnivals, and carnivals have like they kind of have like a carnival field where there's lots of stalls where the people visit before and after the carnival, and so it's that's but sometimes you need the public liability insurance to do those as well, and you have to pay. It's not very much usually.
Yeah, Redditch used to have a carnival once upon a time. It doesn't have one anymore. But I used to, that the floats used to go past it. It'd be good if you could still hire one of those and just get it to play something like Tom Reagan's speech just on repeat.
I suppose you could hire a float, but it's probably if
you wouldn't necessarily need anyone on the back of it. You could just literally have like a sound system that just played.
Yeah, it'd be good. I suppose it'd be good advertising. You could have a big banner on there or something.
Yeah, you can put banners and things on it. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, you can.
You could dress up as Tom Reagan, Andy, and mime.
I don't think I'd do a very good job of pulling it off.
Yeah, I mean you could do. Although, but obviously, if you want to discuss with people and give them literature, then it's better to have a stall.
Yeah,
there's no reason why you couldn't have both if you had enough people to be able to do both.
That's true. I mean, I don't know if it's still the same. When I was a kid, we used to have these when the carnival used to come through, the milk floats or whatever they were, like the floats, they'd only go very, very slowly. And you'd have like their members of staff or volunteers that would walk alongside, usually with buckets for like money. Yeah. So you just exchange the buckets for flyers, I suppose.
Yeah, the only time I've ever been on a car, I mean in the sort of late 1970s, I was in a punk band, and one of the members of our got got us a spot got us a float. We were on the back of this flatbed lorry, one of the floats in the local carnival, and we were supposed to be, playing on the float, but the sound system didn't work, so we were just stood there.
Do you just miming? So you were
Stood there
basically
looking
just
twats.
like
Well, there was no sound.
foretelling music in 2020.
Yeah, there was no. It's for some reason we couldn't get the sound system to work, so we were just stood on this, going round the town on this back of this float with people gawping at us, thinking, "Who the hell are they?" It was like really embarrassing.
Would you have not done like an acoustic set or something?
Sorry, Andy.
Could you not done like an acoustic set or something, just so that you were doing something?
Well, nobody would really have heard us, I don't think. Because it's quite noisy. Yeah, it was. Yeah, but that was typical of our band, to be quite honest. All the things that went wrong.
I'll save my second question for a bit later because it gives us a chance to promote next Tuesday's show. So, where's the best place to start with today in terms of like jail stories and that sort of stuff? Is it best to give some sort of like context in how you got there, or you're just going to?
Yeah, I mean, we could do it. I mean, if we want to do it historically, I mean, obviously that starts with me. I mean, I was sent to prison in March of 1975, a 3-year sentence for.
How many different nicks have you been into, Ronnie?
I reckon it must be about a dozen.
Wow.
A dozen different ones, because on one sentence. You can be in quite a number of different prisons on one prison sentence, and I think
especially if it's a 10-year, because you go down in kind of their rating of how dangerous you are, don't you? And then you get moved to semi-open.
Yeah, that's right. You end up. I mean, when I got my 10-year sentence, when I first got put into prison, and this would have been in 1987, wouldn't it? And our trial was in Sheffield, and so the prison I went to was Leeds. I'd already been in Leeds on remand, during the trial. Went back to Leeds, and because I'd got a 10-year sentence, they treated me as a Category A prisoner, and I was put in this top security cell. And the only reason they did it really was because they had this policy of wanting to keep the Category A cells full. There was probably about 8 of these Category A cells, and that were all super secure. There were extra bars, the walls were extra thick. The furniture in the cells was made of cardboard. It was very tough cardboard, in case one of these highly dangerous Category A prisoners used the furniture to attack one of the prison officers. So it was all made of cardboard. It was very strong though. I was able to do step-ups on the cardboard chair. So, so I don't know.
Although on that note, though, yes. I can kind of understand from like the prison's perspective. I would want to keep someone like yourself for as long as possible in a Category A place as well, because you're preventing an absolute psychopath from coming in. You're not going to be any real trouble.
Well, no. I suppose that's Basically, because I had a long sentence and they had an empty Category A cell, they put me in it because the idea was it kind of provides employment, because wherever you go, when you're on Category A, wherever you go, you have to have like 3 prison officers with you. If I wanted to go to the toilet, I had 3. I mean, thankfully, they didn't actually come in the toilet with me, but they stay outside. And then when you go on exercise, you have it in this special compound with a really high fence with barbed wire on the top. And then outside, there's prison officers patrolling with German Shepherd dogs. And then you walk round and round this compound for half an hour, once a day, with other Category A prisoners. Some of whom are kind of highly dangerous, pretty much psychopaths. Like some of them,
Yeah, I mean, I think like we can kind of sort of, I don't know, talk about it now, but. When you think back, were you actually genuinely scared? Because I mean,
there was one guy, because obviously I talked to them, and there were guys that were in for really serious robberies and murders. Yes. There was one guy, and it was quite a well-known case. It was on a Christmas Eve. He was walking along, and he saw another guy. An elderly guy, and he just killed this elderly guy. who was a retired school teacher.
Wow.
And I said to him, I was walking around with him, and I said to him, "Why did you kill that guy, that retired school teacher?" And he said, "Because he was there." And I thought, "Shit, I'm here. What if he thinks I'm
exactly.
there?"
I mean, if it really does boil down to something.
He was there. And I thought, "Shit, I'm here. What if he thinks I'm
exactly.
there?"
I mean, if it really does boil down to something.
Because he was judged to be like kind of insane, or
I was in the cell once with this guy who was trying to set the plastic lights on fire. You know, the kind of cover for the lights.
oh yeah.
And he was trying to do that all night, and so I didn't get a wink of sleep, as you can imagine. And that was a bit nightmarish. But generally speaking, it was. I never felt too bad about things.
No.
I made friends with the lifers quite a lot because they tended to be a bit more stable as people, and I learned quite a lot from them. You know the idea that they've got to have these kind of psych evaluations every now and again, and they were really kind of they were really put out by it because they were trying to second guess what they were going to be asked, and then they would be almost like we walk around the exercise yard trying to say, well, say if they asked me this, what should I say? That kind of thing. It's a little bit like Shawshank Redemption, really.
That's it. Yeah, they get assessed, don't they, every so often as to whether they're going to be released, because the recommended term for a prisoner serving life is a minimum term. That's the very soonest they can be released, but very often they don't get released on that day.
They kind of put a foot wrong, and you can put yourself back 2 or 3 years. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, there was a lot of gallows humour. Like one lifer came back from a visit, and he goes, "Oh, amazing! I just met my 5-year-old for the very first time. Weird though. I've been in jail 8 years."
Yeah, that's. I know. It's like that. Yeah, I suppose there has to be humour. It's how they kind of survive. But I mean, going back. I mean, I think we spoke about this before. It's like I was sent to prison in March 1975. I had a 3-year sentence. I was trying to destroy an animal research laboratory that was being built and seriously damaging to boats that were going to be used for seal hunting and various other things. And there were 2 of us, and we got 3 years each. And of course, that was when I went on hunger strike to get a vegan diet. And I think we've already covered that. Have we spoken about that in a previous episode?
I think we did. Yeah, I think we did.
About that.
Yeah, we did briefly touch on it. Yeah, and one of the questions I was going to ask both of you, though, I suppose, is especially like the first time you both got sent to jail, what was kind of like the reaction of friends or especially family? Because I mean, there's one thing, isn't there, like going and getting involved in these things, but obviously when all of a sudden there's some direct consequences and repercussions, that's usually when you get a reaction.
Well, I sort of got a react. When I got involved, I mean, I started off getting involved in hunt sabs, and I mean, especially my mum absolutely hated it, and I had this. I used to contact the media, get the local media to come along on the SAB because I thought it'd be good publicity against hunting. And they used to in those days, I don't think they do it now, but in those days they used to come out and we used to get articles in the local newspaper and everything. There was even one article when I sabbed a hunt on my own, like very foolhardy, I think it was, but I bunked off work one day and because the hunt were in my local area, and I went out on my own and, used the hunting horn to distract the hounds and stuff like that, And I got it in the local paper. I got a reporter to come along, got it in the paper, and I used to keep all the cuttings in a scrapbook. You see, that I had at home because I was living with my parents at the time, and I think I would have been like 21, I think, something like that, and I there'd been another article in a local newspaper. I cut it out and I was going to put it in the scrapbook. When I opened the scrapbook, I found my mum had written all over it. She'd written all over it like, you've turned into a lunatic. You've brought shame on the family and that. And she put, you brought the police to the door because I got arrested on a hunt. All of us, we were on a hunt and the police arrested us all. and said, "Oh, we're arresting you for conspiracy." And we said, "What type of conspiracy?" I said, "Oh, conspiracy to disrupt a lawful meeting." And I said, "I don't think that exists, does it, that charge?" But it was just to keep us in the cells, and then they let us go after the hunt was over. So
Yeah, make it up as they go along.
yeah, made it up. But anyway, what they did was they sent a local police officer round to my house, or my parents' house, just to check that I really lived there, because obviously they had the resources then to kind of check that kind of thing up, whether I'd given them the correct address. And of course, my mum was so upset. Oh, the neighbours saw a police car outside the house and all of that, that kind of thing. And so she wrote, you wrote the police door. And the other thing she wrote, I think my mum must have been a bit clairvoyant. She must have been able to foresee the future. Because the other thing she wrote on the scrapbook was, "You will end up in prison." So she must have been able to see the future. You see.
Did she write you'll end up bald? No.
I was already going bald, I think, even then. So I don't think that would have.
I didn't have any of your problems because it's really weird because like my family left me rather than losing. Because it's really weird because like my family left me rather than losing. It was a time when cinemas were becoming cine bingos, and so she started working at a cinema thing, went cine bingo, and then she ended up being a manager for a bingo club. And so she was really good at it. And so the company, Star it was called, they used to send her around, and she went to Ladbrokes, and to build up a club and then pass it over to a manager that wasn't as good and this kind of stuff. So that meant that we moved a lot when I was a kid. And so I was always the new kid in the class, and this kind of stuff. And so I got involved with the entertainment business, became a projectionist. And so she was working in Nottingham. I was working in Derby, and we had a rented house in between. And then she got a really big promotion to go to London, and she said that she wanted to take it. And I said, well, I don't want to leave my job, And so she left me. And so I had to get a bedsit in Derby. And so by the time I was involved with activism, my brother was 10 years senior. He was away in Yorkshire. My sister was at university. So I didn't really have a family problem at all, to answer your question, Andy. At the beginning. My family problem was a little bit later when I got done for fraud. But that was just for a demo. You said police to the door, Ronnie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, these coppers came to the door in a place just outside of Bradford. I was living there with my sister and my mum. But this was later in life, right? And the cops came, and they came with sniffer dogs, and they said that these sniffer dogs can sniff out fireworks, so tell us where the explosives are and this kind of stuff. And I said, well, you won't find any, So they searched the place and all the rest of it. And I remember very clearly my mum just stood almost frozen, right, watching this scene going on with all these cops darting around. And then afterwards, when I got taken back to Liverpool, I was arrested and taken back to Liverpool, my sister said that my mum had a flashback because my father, they were divorced when I was 6, so I don't remember anything about him. I had 3 memories of my father, and my mum insisted that 2 of them were wrong. And so my sister said that my mother had this flashback about my dad, who was a copper. And he said that she realized that he had this special pair of brown leather gloves, and which he used to use to hit suspect with because they didn't leave any marks. And she'd kind of driven this kind of memory completely out of her mind until this all brought it back. That recovered memory type.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. Sounds like a nice guy.
No, he wasn't. It was violent. I mean, apparently he threw me out in the snow when I was a kid.
Oh dear. I mean, my dad was not great in lots of ways, but he wasn't violent, thankfully.
No. This guy was really violent. Yeah.
But when I got put in jail, my mum and dad went on. There was a protest outside the prison demanding my release. Some hope for that. And my mum and dad did actually go on that. They went along to that.
It'll be a demo to keep you inside now,
Yeah,
right?
probably. Yeah, probably would be. Yeah, but they didn't really carry on. They carry on with it, and they used to come visit me in jail. And at the time when I was in, because after I was in Armley in Leeds for quite some while. I think I was in there for 6-9 months before I got transferred to Long Lartin, which is down near Evesham, and it's a long-term prison. That is.
Tell you one thing, Ronnie. That's one thing that the prison authorities used to do. They used to transfer people to really miles away from where their families were to make visiting really hard, didn't they?
Yeah. Well. What happened was, you see, from Leeds, normally the prison, because what happened is I eventually got, after a few weeks, I got taken off Category A because a guy got brought into the prison who had been given 10 years for rape. And I think they decided he was rather more a danger to the public than I was. So they put him in my cell. But I was a bit disappointed to leave that cell because...
I hope they took you out first, Rennie.
Well, yeah. Yes, I think they did, thankfully. But I was a bit disappointed to leave that cell because I then got put in a cell with two other prisoners, whereas on Category A I had a cell to myself, which was much better. And then after, as I say, 6 or 9 months, I got sent to Long Lartin, which is like a... But you see, what happened, really, I had to I sort of had to petition the governor or whatever to get sent to Long Lartin because they didn't normally send people there from Leeds. They normally sent them to places in the kind of north of the country. There was
like Weimar and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, Weimar for... But the long-term prisons, you know what they call the Category A prisons, which aren't all, they're not all Category A. They're kind of Category A and B really. But
they get transferred to Strangewood, I suppose.
I think there was a place called Garth, which is somewhere up there and north, and there's other ones up north. You see,
there was that one called Slade with Ronnie Barker in it. Remember that?
Oh, that one, yeah, because he had 5 years, didn't he, Ronnie Barker? I think whatever. No, but so I had to come because my parents lived in Gloucester, you see, so that they could come visit me. And because my dad's health wasn't that great, and so it was difficult for him to travel long distances, I requested that I get moved to Long Lartin, and that succeeded. So I got moved there. So it was easier for my parents to visit me. And at the time, and you know, they stopped it long ago because of because of drugs, really. But at the time, on a visit, visitors could bring food in for prisoners to eat. And
what else?
Yeah, I mean, my mum used to make me Sosmix pies.
Well, I suppose just it was food in also that you could trade, right? If it wasn't just to eat.
Oh, yeah, well, you had to eat it. You couldn't take it with you. You had to eat it there and then. You had to eat it at the table.
Yeah.
You see, but you see, when my friends came to visit me, I used to say to them, don't bring food because I want to talk to you. I want to have a conversation with you. I don't want to be sat there eating all the time, you see. And
that's exactly why they brought it, though, Ronnie. To
shut me up. Well,
I was just waiting for Roger
but
to
with
say
my parents, my parents, there wasn't much, they weren't involved in the animal liberation movement, and so there wasn't really very much to talk to them about. So I was. Well,
that's the same with me. I mean, when I was in prison, I never got any visit from family members because it was always movement people. I mean, like I was. Yeah, I mean, the movement was my family, not my actual family.
Yeah, I think that's the same for me. But
yeah, I feel that.
Every so often they would come in and they they were okay, but there wasn't much really to talk to them about. So I was quite happy to sit there and eat the food. And yes, I mean I don't know how many visits. I think it was 2 visits a month. It was one every 2 weeks or something there. Something like that, perhaps 3 a month. I think later on in my prison sentence, you could have a visit every week, but
I always think once you get a cell on your own, you're kind of set up then, really, aren't you? Because you don't really have that much trouble. Although, I mean, there's a couple of times when I was at Wymont, they used to have an induction wing. So there was like 4 wings. One was induction, and there was 3 wings. And so people who were arrested together, especially the ones who ended up grassing each other and stuff, they were having to put on different wings to keep them apart. But every now and again, they would like cross over, manage to get into the different wing where they're not supposed to be. And I remember being in a cell once with this guy, and suddenly these knives and everything were being flashed around. And so he was at the door, kind of with a knife going out, and they were at the door with a knife coming in.
Blimey.
Yeah. So that was a bit hairy, but those kind of things are pretty few and far between, really.
They kind of are really. I mean, most of the problems and the the violence between prisoners that I witnessed in prison was to do with drugs. It's because that there was drugs would be smuggled into there'd be drug dealers, drug barons in the prison who'd get drugs smuggled in, usually on a visit.
That's a different word for prison officer, isn't it, right?
Well, yes. I mean, there were some prison officers involved in it as well, but I think.
Well, they had a weird policy in my prison, because they would never admitted this publicly, of course, is that they were very, very tolerant of cannabis. In fact, they used to encourage cannabis parties and stuff. But, I mean, they would clamp down heavily if anybody made any homemade hooch, alcohol. But they liked people to be stoned because it kind of calmed them down, and it ended up just being a party atmosphere. And I mean, I remember there was one prison officer in my thing, and the cons would go to him with a rock of cannabis and said, "Do you reckon this is worth half an ounce, Gov?" And you go, "No, knock it back. It's not big enough." And he was giving everybody advice. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's it. I think there are kind of nastier drugs than that in prison now, from what I've heard. I mean, I think.
Well, that's the thing, though. You see that what they would do is they would really try and clamp down on those, and then the ones that calmed everybody down, they would allow in. But then they would never admit that publicly.
Oh no, of course not. No, but where I've seen it is where you'd get, like, say, a prisoner who's a drug dealer who'd have drugs smuggled in on a visit, and then sell those drugs to other prisoners and other prisoners would have cash smuggled in on visits, and they'd use that cash to pay the drug dealer, and then the drug dealer would smuggle the cash out on a visit, and that's how it would work. But sometimes you'd get a guy would get drugs and wouldn't pay for them, and so they then end up being beaten up by a drug dealer, by his mates. That would happen. And that was the main cause, really, I think, of friction between prisoners. It was to do with drugs.
Yeah. Okay, so we ought to move on somewhere else. So you talked about your first sentence. So where did you go? What was the second one?
The second one was, well, on the first sentence was I
said second one, Ronnie.
Oh, the second one. Yeah, where did I go on the second one? Well, on the second one, the second one was for burglary and criminal damage at a place that bred mice. I think it was mice for I don't know whether there are any other small animals, but certainly bred mice there. It was a place in sort of southeast London area, Surrey, and a few of us broke in there. We damaged the vehicle. We rescued some mice from there, and I ended up being done for that. And I got 12-month sentence for that. And that was in. I initially got sent to Wandsworth in London, which is really quite a hard prison. And then from there I went to Canterbury in Kent, because I had another charge of handling stolen property in connection with a raid that had taken place an ALF raid that had taken place in Kent. And then I got moved to a place called Stamford Hill, which is on the Isle of Sheppey, which is a semi-open prison on that sentence.
That was all in 12 months.
Well, it was 8 months, because out of a 12, in those days you you would do 2/3 of the sentence. You see, what they'd do is if you were what they would term of good behaviour in prison, you would only serve 2/3. If you weren't of good behaviour, they could make you serve up to the full sentence. If you see what I mean, you could lose remission. They call it remission. That the part of the sentence that you don't serve.
Okay, well, perhaps we can move on to the biggie then, the one where you get your 10 years, and I got 4.
Yes.
And so this was the famous Sheffield trial
Yes.
with the law lord who came out of retirement and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so obviously I wasn't there when you were sentenced because I was on the run, right?
Yeah.
Because it was really weird. I was working on an organic farm, and suddenly I got a call from the person running it. And going, Roger, come in, your sentence is on the telly, kind of thing. So I went dashing in, and they were going. Of course, one person who wasn't there was Roger Yates, who was given 4 years. The weird thing about that is that I saw a zine years later, right? And I don't know whether you remember this because you were there, I wasn't. That apparently they'd forgotten about me. And it was like about 30 seconds before the judge said, right, that's the end of the trial. And if that had happened, then I would not been going to prison because they can't send you to prison if they've closed the trial without actually formally sentencing you, apparently. I didn't know that until I read it years later.
Yeah, I mean that's possibly true. That may well be the case. But you see, I maybe wouldn't have known about that because I got sentenced first.
And then
I
taken
got
down
sentenced first and taken down.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have known what followed after that, and I didn't know.
I bet the judges love that, don't they? Take him down.
Oh yeah, they love. Yeah. I think they have.
On that note, Roger, because I don't think it's come up on this show. I've heard you talk about it on YouTube and stuff. Are you cool to talk about you on the run and how that came about? Because I think that's quite an interesting story in itself.
Yeah, well, I was the only defendant with children, and we had a meeting with all the barristers, and this was getting towards the end of the trial, and they were pretty pessimistic. So the way I remember it, although I think Ronnie remembers it a bit different, is that I was told I was going to get 10 years, and I remember Ronnie being told that he was going to get 16.
15
yeah,
years.
That's right. That's the difference. I remember 16. You always remember 15.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, gee, 10 years. That's the rest of my children's schooling. So I kind of thought, I'm not having that. And so I was disappeared to mid Wales and an organic farm. I was there for, well, not that long because I moved then to Manchester into a squat. So we were moving around a little bit, but then, the press were kind of having a field day because, the truth and the press don't often meet. They were saying all kinds of lies about me and everything. And eventually I was in Anglesey when I was nicked. And this was like, I think 2.5 years later. And, my kids had to call me a false name and all that. They were pretty good at it. The cops turned up at the children's Christmas play, wanting to kind of integrate themselves into the audience in order because they had this report that this fugitive was going to come and watch the kids doing their play, and the headmaster was a really kind of eccentric guy who had an old-fashioned car. This is on Anglesey, rural Anglesey in North Wales, and he refused them access. And he goes, no, you're not going to disrupt the children's play and everything that they've been working on for months and months. And so that night he got stopped, the first time he's ever got stopped, and got a parking ticket or something.
Took their revenge on him.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And so, yeah. So I mean that's about it really. I actually had a fairly normal life, although I was campaigning again, but under a false name. But it was all pretty low key stuff. There was no direct action at the time. It's more like that's when the the vegan education started, I suppose.
Yes.
Well, that was what was my next question. Did either of you, whilst you were in jail, I suppose, manage to ripen anyone up?
Oh yeah, there was loads of those. In fact, we used to get. Do you remember Mimi Spence used to send us big bundles of stuff from the BUAV? The BUAV used to have this kind of press cutting service. This was before the internet, and so you would hire a press cutting service. I think it was quite expensive, and you would give them loads of keywords, and then they would then send you press cuttings from all over the country with those keywords in the news items, right? And then Mimi would copy them and send them to us. I think she sent them to us separately. I think, Ronnie.
I think maybe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was quite interesting. I've lost my thread actually. What did you say, Andy? What was the question?
Essentially about either of you ripening people up in jail. I mean, especially if you could turn around and say they're still vegan or whatever.
Yeah, well, I used to get bundles of Slaughter of the Innocent as well by Hans Reusch, which is a famous scientific anti-vivisection book. I used to give them out to the prisoners, and because at one time there was this really kind of belligerent guy who didn't like vegans very much, and he was going, "What's all this about the books then?" and all that kind of stuff. And I suppose I was really reckless because I goes, "Well, I'll give you one, but I need to find out that you can read first and this kind of stuff." And which is probably a really kind of daft thing to have said, really. But he took one, and I do believe that had an effect on quite a few people. But in terms of keeping up with them,
it's hard to know. It's hard to know what effect you've had. There was one guy though in particular. I remember that I think it was on one of my prison sentences. They were all curious about why I was vegan and everything. I was talking to him, and he was adamant he would never go vegan. Oh, I like my meat. I don't agree with you, and I'm, but I was polite, in the conversation with him. And in the end, I had to end the conversation because I had to do something. So we kind of agreed to differ. And then I saw him again on a later prison sentence, and he came up to me and he said, said hello, and he said to me, remember a conversation, we had about veganism, way back. And I said, oh yeah, of course. And he said, well, a couple of weeks after that, he said, I went vegan. He said, because I thought about it. He said, I know I was like totally, didn't want to listen to what you were saying, but he said, I thought about it. I thought about it more after I'd spoken to you, and I decided that you were right, and I'm now vegan. And so he was still obviously still obviously a criminal, but he was a vegan. He become vegan. This guy.
It's a good story, isn't it?
Yeah. But you see, but most people you don't. It's exactly the same when you're doing, when you're doing outreach. Most of the people you speak to, you don't know. It's very rare that you meet people again. That's the thing. And I have done, quite often. Had meet people again who've become vegan. But for the most part, I think there's a lot of people go vegan because of what we say, and what we talked about. What literature we give them, and we don't know about it. We've got no
it's just like at a stall, though, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do you remember that time when we were on remand together, Ronnie, and I had to go back to Liverpool? It was really odd because I think I was one of the only of the kind of main defendants, to put it that way, who didn't have a conviction, right? And it seemed like they needed for me to have a conviction before we went to our main trial, because there's a kind of technicality that if you through your barrister accuse the police of anything, and you've then got a conviction, they're able to reveal your conviction to the jury.
Yes,
which really puts the jury against you.
Yes, yeah.
It was really interesting, because I did criminology afterwards, and it's really interesting to think about the way that things work. Like, for example, the prosecution go first, so they kind of erect this scaffolding, right, and they hang all their kind of evidence on it, or what they say is evidence, And then you go to your barrister, well, that didn't happen, and that didn't happen, and that didn't happen. And he goes, yeah, well, but we can't say that. We've got to just try and take apart their main points, because we can't say that everything is wrong, because the jury, these kind of legal virgins, won't believe you, right? And so, you're kind of trapped in this kind of system.
Yeah.
So I was the one without a conviction. And so I get holed up on this thing about smashing estate agent windows, which had circus posters in them. And my car was seen at the scene. Now, I actually know who was driving it, and it wasn't me. And in fact, it wasn't anyone of my gender either. And but I got hauled up for doing it because it's funny, because I got a postcard once I'd been convicted, which said, "Oh, thanks for doing my sentence."
Yeah.
But I go back to Liverpool, and there was this guy in giving evidence against me. He was like an old kind of Navy guy, with his uniform on and shirt and tie, looked very neat and all that kind of stuff. And he gave evidence that he saw me waiting in the car. And it wasn't true, because I literally wasn't there. So I've always wondered, to this day, I always wonder what the cops had on this guy for him to perjure himself.
Yeah.
And I was so pissed off, because obviously I'd come from Armley to Liverpool. So I was in Liverpool court. And so I was so pissed off, I stormed out of the dock into the waiting room, and the prison officer came toddling with me, kind of thing. And you can't do that. You can't do that. You've got to go back. You've got to go back. And I'm going, I'm sick of this. This is just bullshit. That this guy is lying and all that kind of stuff. And you go, you must go back. You must go back. And so I lost my temper, and I stormed back into the dock. And I was kind of like very self-righteous, really. I was kind of like, who you don't know me, but you're gonna pass a sentence on me, but you don't know anything about me. And so I says to the judge, you sat there with your stupid wig and your Batman cape. You don't know anything about me. I was really kind of upset at the fact that you've got this person who can sentence you, and every copper in the land would be violent to you if necessary in order to carry out their orders, and yet none of them know you. And I always felt that it was very unjust. Because I saw myself as a good person,
and that's when he gave you extra. He gave you prison.
Well, I got 2 months for the smashing windows, which I didn't do, and then I got 14 days for contempt of court.
And when he sentenced you gave you that sentence, did he punch his fist into his palm?
Well, like Robin.
Like Batman, yeah. Gee whiz, Batman.
Yeah, you can. Holy smoke, Batman! But the weird thing is, when I got to Liverpool prison to do this 2 months, it's really weird, because when you're on remand, you're dressed in brown, aren't you, Ronnie? And then when you're convicted, you're dressed in blue. So I had to get changed from brown into blue, and so I was a convicted prisoner then, and I was put as a kind of punishment, I think it was, in with a transgender person, so a trans woman, and I think they thought that was a punishment. It was absolutely a brilliant experience. She was really interesting, and sociologically it was just so fascinating. For example, she showed me all these love letters that she'd got from other prisoners, right, who had fallen in love with her and all this kind of stuff. It is so bizarre. And then she would do this very kind of exaggerated kind of mincing down the thing, to the slop out and all this kind of stuff. And so she would get loads and loads of sexist comments and homophobic comments and all kind of stuff. And yet she would also get loads and loads of love letters. So it's such a bizarre thing to witness. Yeah.
Very, very, very odd. Yeah. But I'm just thinking about other. Yes, I promised to. I promised you the story when we were talking about this earlier. I promised you the story of the visiting trousers, didn't I?
You used to get visited by some trousers.
No, no. What it was when I got and this is to do, with the thing about drugs as well, because when I was in Armley, after I'd been sentenced, I'd been moved out of the Category A cell, and I'd been moved on to the kind of this sort of what they call the first floor onto the landing in a cell with two other guys, and one of the guys. He had a visit. He said, "Oh, I got a visit this afternoon." He says, "I better put on the visiting trousers." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And what he did was he took his underpants off, right, and he put on this pair of trousers. And before he put them on, I said, "What do you mean visiting trousers?" He said, "Here, have a look." And what there was is where the arse was on the trousers, on the seam, there was a slit. He'd made a slit. See, and what it was so that when he was on the visit, his visitors could pass him some cannabis wrapped up in cellophane or wrapped up in some kind of plastic, and he could push it up his arse, you see, to smuggle it in. And so when he came back from the visit, I said, "How'd it go?" He said, "Oh, yeah, really successful." He came back from the visit. He kind of, in the cell, there's a bucket at the time. In the cell, they had buckets that. For us to go to the toilet.
Yeah, before the days of the toilets, wasn't it?
Before now I think they have toilets in all the cells, but in those days, especially in the older prisons, which Armley was, and so he had a shit in this bucket to shit out this cannabis that was wrapped up in the plastic, and so that's how we smuggled it in with the help of the visiting trousers.
Not quite sure where to go after that, Ronnie, but there you go.
No, there's nowhere else to go.
Do you remember the pigeon story?
Oh yeah, that we found on exercise in Hull, wasn't it? Because we were after we were arrested, we were put on remand awaiting trial, and we were sent to Hull prison in Hull.
Yeah, it's Hull. Yeah, I forgot about Hull. So that's my fourth prison.
Yeah, Hull. Yeah. We on exercise, where you're kind of walking around the exercise yard, we came across an injured pigeon, didn't we? And we took her back to the cell.
But she was on there was a kind of square of concrete.
Yes.
Remember, there's that weird guy who used to do all that kind of contortion stuff and all that.
Yeah.
But so there was a square of concrete, and then there was a smaller kind of square of grass. Yeah. And that's where the pigeon had landed, and she was injured, and she was in a bit of a bad state. But you weren't allowed onto the grass. And so Ronnie, we had to kind of fashion a thing where I kind of shielded Ronnie as we walked, along this line where the grass was. And you bombed onto the grass, got the pigeon, and then came back. And then we were just round and round. And so I don't know how we did it, but we managed to get her to the cell. We were sharing a cell at the time. And we also managed to get...
we must have hidden her inside... One of us must have hidden her inside our jacket, I would imagine.
Yeah, I guess so. And then where did we get the cardboard box from? Because I
kind of don't really know. We got a cardboard box from somewhere to keep her in. And then we kind of demanded that the, prison authorities...
Well, that was only after she was found, because we were caring for her in the cell.
In the cell, yeah.
And then they did one of their turnovers and kind of found this vermin, and we were going, you can't have vermin in your cell and all this kind of stuff. And
I said, no, don't be horrible. That's Roger.
I was going to say that consists of like 99.9% of the prison system.
Yeah,
I'd have thrown my cardboard phone at you if you'd have said that.
Oh yeah, the cardboard phone. Yeah.
and so I do, because I think the I don't know what is it, the vice governor or somebody like that came up in the end.
Assistant governor, yeah.
And you kind of threatened them. You said, look, if you don't state that you're going to take this bird to a sanctuary, then I'm going to make a stink, and we'll get the story out, and you'll get loads of bad press.
And knowing Ronnie, that stink could literally be exactly that, to be honest.
That was his visiting trousers.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
But I mean,
They,
of course, we didn't know if
of course, we didn't know, but what else? That was the best we could do at the time. I mean,
Yeah,
I had a
absolutely.
later.
But no, I just think like it's just so admirable to think that even when you're in jail, that you still kind of know what's wrong and stand up for the right
Yeah.
thing. You know, there's just
I
no
later-
limitations on that. That's just incredibly inspiring to hear.
I had a later experience because on that sentence, the prison I ended up, the last prison on that sentence was a semi-open prison down near Newton Abbot in Devon that I was sent to called Channing's Wood, and it's it's not that far from the coast. Not that you need that to be that far from the coast to get seagulls, because there was a sick seagull that I discovered in the grounds of the prison, and I took her back to my cell, and I think I had her in a box, and what I did was with her though, I got there were probation officers that were worked in the prison, and there was one that I was got on very well with, and I got her to take the pigeon to a wildlife rescue. Not the pigeon, the seagull, to a wildlife rescue. So that was I was more certain that I don't actually know whether she survived in the end, but at least I was more certain that she was actually taken to somewhere that could help her, because this woman was like, was someone that I kind of trusted.
Yeah.
we're coming up on the hour, but we've still got a few stories. What do you want to do, Andy?
Well, I've only got one question that I really want to ask, and I suppose as we can do a little bit of promo for Tuesday's show. So if you want to tell at least another couple of stories, go for it. I haven't seen anything in the chat yet.
No, I've been looking. Yeah. Well, there was a badger beta that we were on remand with, but I mean that's not particularly interesting. But I do remember when I was back in. This is after I was caught after being on the run. I was in Wymot, and they used to mess up the food. It was a lot easier to get vegan friendly food at that time, but they used to mess it up, because obviously they didn't care that much. And so quite often I would have to go back to the gallery type thing and go, my nosh has not arrived, and so they would take me. An officer would have to take me to the kitchens, and the kitchens were really kind of large and everything. But you got a real insight to what it was like. For example, there was these big kind of loads of kind of heated shells and all that, and there was these big kind of piles of pig flesh and stuff, and it soon became clear to me by watching what was going on that the prison guards used to get all the best so-called meat, and the inmates used to get all the crap, which wasn't very good. And so that explains one reason why a lot of prisoners, and we both know this, I think, that they would opt for the vegetarian diet when they went to prison, whether they were veggie or not, because it was known to be better than the flesh-based diet. And so I kind of saw it, because I mean there was prison officers going out with holdalls full of uncut flesh and stuff,
Yes, that's right. They did. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were on a real scam.
Oh, absolutely. But I found the vegan diet, and I mean, especially on my last sentence, I found that the food was actually really nice, to be quite honest. And it's a big thing in prisons that prisoners complain about the food. They're always complaining about the food. When the situation is really that the food they get given in prison is probably more
it's better than what they normally have,
than what they would have at home, because a lot of them kind of probably survive on junk food, and the the meals in prison have to be up to a certain nutritional standards. You see, so they would have been more nutritious than what most of them had at home. But the vegan food.
Sometimes it was
nice.
Excellent. It was great when I was on the induction thing. But also there was a time when there was some student chefs, I think, having kind of work experience, and for that 2 weeks, the food was brilliant. But going back to the food choices on Christmas Day, I remember loads of complaints. all the Scousers mainly, because it was like kind of it's Christmas Day. We haven't even got chips. There we go.
Oh no, yeah, everyone loved chips, didn't they? And the other strange thing was because in prisons they they make their own bread. So they make their own bread, and there were occasions when something went wrong with the cookers or whatever, and they had to get bread in from outside. And it was always something like Mother's Pride, you see. And when they had that bread, the principal was going, "Oh, it's wonderful. We've got real bread. We've got real bread." And I said, "Well, no, hang on a minute. The bread you were eating before was real bread, and this bread now, the Mother's Pride, that's shit bread."
you got white stodge.
Yeah, that's right, because they sort of saw it the other way round, that was the bread they were used to having outside on their terrible diets that they ate outside.
Did you ever have a time when you thought that your food had been contaminated, Ronnie?
To be honest, no. The only one occasion was that we had a there was some kind of this was once again when I was in Channings Wood, the last prison I was in, and there was kind of like an entertainment night that was put on for the prisoners, and I don't know whether there were certain prisoners that were talented at different things, and they kind of put on a bit of a show, and we all went to it, and there was they were serving soup, they were serving different drinks, and one of them was soup, and there was this soup that was meant to be like suitable for vegans, so I had some of that. And then the next day I had one of the prisoners saying, "Oh, that soup you drank, there was meat in that. They said it was suitable for vegans, but there was meat in that soup. I know because I'm from the kitchen and all that, Then that was it. And I said, well, that's not my fault. I was told it was vegan, so if there's meat in it, that's not my fault, is it? That was my response to that.
I guess it might be true. I got the impression one time that there was cheese in my food, and so I was thinking, and you weren't sure, so I left it. And so I used to have a lot of stuff from the canteen because I used to make a lot of money from selling tobacco, and so I used to get because I was really popular during those kind of cannabis parties that they had. You would get at the end of the cannabis parties, there used to be a lot of kind of people going around the cells kind of begging for a biscuit and stuff. And they used to love me because they would come to the cell and say, "You haven't got any munchies, have you, mate?" and all that. And I would give them a complete packet of biscuits and just hand it over. And they loved it, So it was part of my protection racket, because on a Friday when the new people came, they were kind of going, there's a lot of kind of pecking order stuff on the Friday. And people would come to and look into my cell, always kind of begging for tobacco, and I didn't have any. And but they would also. I was there early because I was back from education, and then they came back from labour, and the new people were kind of going, "Who's that then?" And the people who knew me was going, "Oh, that's Mr. Vegan. So you leave him alone. It's all right." Right. And so they call me Mr. Vegan.
Well, there's worse things they could have called you than that, isn't there? So that's pretty good.
There is rather, but when I had that thing where I thought that there was cheese, so I thought, well, okay, I'll just live out of the canteen then, which was okay. And then suddenly this screw comes to the door and says, "Are you on hunger strike?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, you're not coming to get your food." I said, "Well, yeah, I'm not so sure about it, and all that." And he said, "Well, that, as far as we're concerned, that's a hunger strike." I said, well, I'm not on hunger strike. He said, "I don't want your food," kind of thing, and because I don't trust it. And they said, "Well, look, what you've got to do is you've got to come and get your food, and then you come back and put it outside your door, so you don't have to take it in, but you've got to come and get it." Right, and then
I have no idea how that makes sense. Surely, if anything, that constitutes a hunger strike.
No, wait, it's the fact that no, they go, "Well, Yates comes and gets his food every day, so he's not on hunger strike, right?" And so,
yeah, but the fact that you're putting it outside your door uneaten.
Well, they probably wouldn't tell people that, would they?
I suppose, yeah.
And so it was just a way of doing it. And then when you got the confidence back that it was okay again, you would go back. But I was quite happy to kind of be very self-reliant really on it, because I had enough to buy all these biscuits and other bits and pieces. I mean, it obviously was a pretty crappy diet and all that, but at least I knew it was vegan,
Yeah, they used to. I mean, in Long Lartin, you used to be able to do at the the canteen, people that wondering about it. In the prison shop, the shop that they have in prison, there's a shop in prison. It's called, for some strange reason, it's called the canteen. And you go there once a week, and you've got two sources of money in prison. You've got your earnings, which you earn from whatever job you have in prison doing. I mean, they do still have sewing mailbags as a job in prison, but there's
I was absolutely crap at it. I couldn't do it at all.
or you can go on education. You get paid for that, although it's not as much as being in a workshop. Or the most sought after job in prison tends to be working in the kitchen because they get better paid. They get the most money.
And the food, of course.
And yeah, choice of food. And then they can, and that money, you can spend on anything. And most prisoners spend it on tobacco. And then
the trustee must have been a good job.
Trustee would have been a well-paid job, yeah. And then you've got another source of income, which is called private cash, which you can spend on a much more limited range of things. You can use it to buy books, and sometimes there was one prison where you could buy records. You could play records. You could have a record player and play records. There was one place I was in. But in Long Lartin, you couldn't use your private cash to buy tobacco, but you could use it to buy food, to a certain extent, and or a certain amount of your private cash every week you used to buy food plus your earnings. And what they would do is they take outside orders if they didn't. The canteen's quite small, so they don't have a wide range of food. But if you wanted something that was not in the canteen, a prison officer would go out shopping, would go to the supermarket and buy the stuff in. So we were able to order all sorts, and there were these. There was like some members of a gang of robbers. They were robbing security vans in London, and there were two of them. There were two of them, and then another one came. Of this gang, and what they used to do is they for their kind of the dinners in the prison, they one of them just used to cook their own. He just used to spend their money on this food and just cook their own, and they'd lay out a table in the corridor with a tablecloth on and everything, and sit there.
Yeah, but what would they use to cook?
There was a kitchen. There was a kitchen where you could cook. You could cook your own food.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was a kitchen, and they would
like a bloody holiday camp. These prisons.
Yeah, and in that prison you could wear your own clothes. You could have clothes sent in, or you could buy it.
Oh, right wing people will be loving this, Ronnie.
Yeah. And they'd all wear these two guys that were members of these robbers. I think they were serving something like 18 years. They'd wear all designer clothes. They'd have all designer clothes, and then they got all excited, these two, because the leader of the gang was he was in another prisoner, and he was being sent to the prison I was in. This was Long Lartin, and they're all excited about this guy Charlie. Oh, we've got to get some food in, make a lovely dinner to welcome Charlie. Charlie's coming. We've got to give him the works, and they're all on about this bloody Charlie, leader of the gang, And this Charlie came in at the prison, and he was wearing ordinary prison clothes, and I thought, well, he won't be wearing them for long. He'll be sending away and getting the designer clothes and all that, And he was in a cell. They were in a cell on my landing, and they were in cells on my landing. The two other members of this gang, and Charlie was up on the sort of up on the first floor, and in the cells, this was the other. In the cells, you could buy carpets for the cells. You could buy bedspreads. You could buy curtains for the window and everything, and these guys all had all this posh stuff in their cells.
Sounds like the Italian job, doesn't it?
Yeah. So anyway, I used to do a lot of running, you see, and this Charlie came to see me. He'd only been in there a few days. Came to see me. He said, "Oh, hello. I've been told you're into running." He said, "I want to get into running. How does it work? How long are you allowed to kind of run around they had a field there. We went out on exercise, and I got talking to her about it. And this was up in his cell. He said, "Oh, come up and see me in my cell, and and have a chat about it." And I went in his cell, and he's still dressed in prison clothes, and his cell's just got prison. He's got the prison, all prison stuff, like the prison bedspread and like the prison curtains and all that. And I looked around. He said, "I suppose you're wondering why I'm not wearing designer clothes, and why I haven't got a carpet on the floor, and why I haven't got flashy curtains, and why I haven't got a flashy bedspread." I said, "Yeah, I am actually." He said, "That's bollocks." He said, "It's all bollocks. We're in fucking prison, and no matter what you do like that, you're still in prison. It's all bollocks." And I thought, yeah, I know now why you're the leader of the gang.
No, you're not going to play along with all the rubbish.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, the scariest thing that happened to me is when, because when I was living out the canteen, that was at Wymot, but then I had another thing where I thought the food was a bit dodgy when I was in Armley on remand. This was after I got caught, after I've been on the run. And so I didn't eat for a few days, trying to work out what to do and all that. And because everything's so bloody slow, in terms of applications. Because you used to have to make an application in order to make an application. So everything, yeah, everything was slowed down. And so one day I fainted, right? And so it was slop out, and everybody's, coming out the cells and all that, and I just keeled over. And so I woke up in the infirmary, and they were going, what's wrong and all that, doctors there and all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, I haven't been eating because I wasn't sure. And he goes, I wasn't sure about what. And so I said, well, I'm a vegan and all that. And as soon as I said that, they just lost their temper with me. So they grabbed me off this thing, kind of took me into this cell, which was bare, and ripped all my clothes off and put this kind of plastic thing on with plastic ties. It's called a zoot suit.
It
was like a tunic,
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like a solitary confinement cell. And they just thought I was taking the piss out of them. Right. Kind of, we're not having any of this kind of crap, And so I think I was there for a couple of weeks. And it was really weird because it was just like a film, the food would arrive, through a little hole, I think, in and all that. It was just like the films. It's all a bit bizarre. So I was there in this zoot suit, and I kept saying to myself, "I'm not in a laboratory. I'm not in a laboratory." And so in other words, it's not that bad.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And so I kind of got through it, just by doing that. And I used to. It was because it was an empty cell. It was echoey. So I used to. I mean, I can't sing very well, but I used to sing to myself, and it was all echoey. So it sounded fairly good to my ears, anyway.
You couldn't have recorded it, really.
Yeah, and so I kind of got through it. But I suppose from their point of view, if I wanted to be fair about it, it probably did look as though I was just taking the piss. I was on remand, and I suddenly stopped eating for no good reason as far as they're concerned.
Could you have food brought into on remand at that time? Because I know that.
I think it was the fact that I think that when we were all together on remand, then you got the prisoner support thing, and that was very organised and everything. But when I was nicked, I was on my own, and so I don't even think that people knew. I was actually, I was at home or in this rented place, and suddenly, bang! the door comes in.
Yeah.
And so nobody knew that I'd been nicked, because there is that time when they tried to nick me a few months earlier. It's really weird. Because Woody Allen saved me. Remember that story, Ronnie? Woody Allen saved me. Woody Allen had a film called Sleeper, I think it was, and we got the kids off to bed, and we had this really small TV. It was like the size of a laptop nowadays, and so I pulled the couch up and the idea was that when the kids had gone down, we would watch this film, right? And so the couch would stop the door from fully opening, right? And so just as everything was getting organised, I heard a bang, bang, bang on the door. And my partner at the time opened the door, and I just heard this male voice saying, "Is Alf in?" Right. And I thought, aye, Alf. And so I went for the window. And by the time I got the window open, this door kind of burst in, but it kind of rebounded on them because it hit this couch, which I'd only just put there to watch this film. It was just total luck. And so I jumped out the window and I just felt this kind of claw kind of hand on my back, but they weren't able to grab hold of me. And so I was off, right? And so then it was a question of, I kind of just hung around for about 4 or 5 hours till the middle of the night. And I couldn't work out now whether the cops are still going to be there waiting for me. So I snuck into the garage where the main power supply was. And so I snuck into the garage, turned the power to the house off, and ran back out again to see who would come out. You know, and luckily it was just my partner. So I crept back in, and they'd gone. Apparently they'd only stayed a few more minutes, and so I didn't even need to have been out there for 4 hours, but I was. That was a weird one.
But yeah, but I mean, you had another story, didn't you, about you were going to Ireland, weren't you? And you got
oh, blimey, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I actually got a false passport, and so I went to Holyhead, and it was people from Liverpool who took me, and Holyhead is completely different now. In fact, I went through Holyhead on the way to London for the NARM, and it's completely different now. So it used to go down this kind of like coast road, and then there was just a little kind of little building which you went through, and then you'd go to the ferry. But it's all changed now. But we were down there, and we'd come up, and we turned and parked by this building in order to go through for the ferry. And the cops got really suspicious. They wanted to know why there was 2 people from Liverpool who'd come from Liverpool to get the Holyhead ferry to Ireland instead of getting the ferry from Liverpool to Ireland.
yeah,
So it kind of didn't make sense to them. And so the cops started to, you know, strip the car and everything. They opened the boot, they opened the bonnet. And I realized that with the boot open and the cops were, you know, kind of in the bonnet, you know, looking around in the engine for some reason. But I realized that if I just walked away from them in a straight line, I was kind of sheltered by the boot of the vehicle, and they couldn't see me. And so the other 2 people were standing with the cops, right? And so I just kind of sauntered away and then dropped down onto the beach area, which, I mean, you can't even do that anymore. And then made my way out of Holyhead, right? And the other 2 people said that they were having an affair, and that's why they'd come to Holyhead instead of getting the ferry in Liverpool. And also I was a hitchhiker, and I do remember I lost a good pair of wellies and 50 quid on that deal. And so I kind of walked and hitched kind of halfway back through Anglesey until eventually it was getting light, and I managed to make a phone call back to Liverpool, and, you know, 3 hours later somebody turned up. And then what we did was we were just like sat in the car, but just down this little kind of laneway, waiting for all the traffic from the ferry to start coming past. And then we joined that as though we'd come off the ferry as well. And then the real problem then was, would we make it over the bridge which separates Anglesey to mainland Wales? Because that was a danger thing. That's where you'd have been stopped if there's an alert and everything. But luckily nothing happened, and so got away with that one as well.
Yeah, you could write a book about all this, or a film.
You should.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. More than enough tails between the pair, yeah.
So you were going to ask something else, Andy?
Yeah, so my question will bring us onto a bit of promotion for Tuesday's show, I suppose. But one of the things that I noticed about myself is whilst I was packing for NAM the other day, I noticed that I've got a number of T-shirts now that there's nothing wrong with, but I don't like the claims that are on the front of them. And so I was potentially thinking about, encouragement for people who are in the same position. I mean, just for example, I think I've got 3 T-shirts that say "Be kind to all kinds." Now, I wouldn't use that messaging now, and so I was thinking about putting a
Give them a
patch
T-shirt
over
amnesty.
them. So a bit like we do with the memes, I suppose, where they're updated and some of the language has changed. If that is a possibility, whether we use, I don't know, some sort of fabric paint
Or just get
fabric
get
paint.
people to send them to you. You can have a big bonfire and get the press there and
Well,
tell
well,
them
well,
the
the thing is, it seems like most people are going to be reluctant to just throw these things in the bin, right? Like we see people that are reluctant to stop using the same memes that they've spent no money on. So just maybe there's a way of updating some of these things so that they still can be used. Because I'd still wear those T-shirts if the claims making was different, but I won't wear them with what they say.
Yeah, well, the ones that say abuse, you could just cut the A and B out.
Well, that would be
Okay.
easy enough, yeah, exactly. Or I could put a big red cross to it or something, exactly that. But I haven't actually got a T-shirt that says abuse. funnily enough.
Somebody did that in Liverpool once. I objected to their T-shirt. There's no excuse for animal abuse, and so he got a permanent marker and he just put a big cross across the A and
Absolutely,
B.
yeah, that's very effective.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's effective.
yeah. I think
Sometimes having the letters A, B crossed out or dulled
AB was
is
crossed
more
out. Yeah, and
effective
so
than taking
it
them
kind
away.
of
Yeah,
made an
because you're
interesting
making that
statement.
distinction.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But obviously, yeah, that potentially brings us on to what we're talking about Tuesday, which is essentially the same thing, isn't it? It's all about the march, the claims making, the banners, the placards, the signs, and the movement as a whole.
Yeah, well, I think we need to do like a sober assessment of the groups that turned up and the. I mean, because you were showing me a couple of banners today, which was really shocking because I hadn't seen them, but they were actually still regarding our fellow animals. I mean, actually written it down on a banner and calling them
That's it. Yeah. And like I said, the other one that I did see that said, if it lives, let it live, or I can't remember what it was, something along those lines. It was just as bad as the other one. I couldn't actually get a photo of. So there was a couple that used like language like it, and it's like, yeah, these are people that have chosen to write this down.
Yeah, but the point is, I think sociologically and also because of the movement, it goes to show how normalized and embedded that language is. That even the people who are trying to change things for our fellow animals get caught up in the the conventional way of expressing themselves, right?
Yeah. Oh no, it was if it bleeds, leave it alone. That was the one that I didn't get a photo of, which is not great. But no, I also thought it was interesting. We were talking about a little bit earlier privately that Animal Aid, I thought the contingent that they sent, their claims making was really good. It was all rights, not welfare. It was all kind of that. But then there were people that were wearing Animal Aid T-shirts or had other placards with Animal Aid's logo on, which were very much single issue and welfare that had obviously come from other events. And so it just shows that when we're inconsistent like this, you can see 2 different people with exactly the same banner, exactly the same logo. The claims making is completely different.
You got the Animal Justice Project had those placards that said rights, not welfare.
Oh, was it the Animal Justice? Sorry, yeah, it's AJP that I was thinking of, not
AJP,
Animal Aid. Yeah.
It was them. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because it was the other ones that I saw there, more blue banners that had some of the single issue stuff. So yeah, their representation that they sent to the march, their claims making was great, but because of some of their previous claims making not being so consistent, they've got kind of like contradictions there that aren't even within their own rank, so to speak. But they're still being represented, and I noticed exactly the same thing with like the group from Peter. Some of the older Peter banners and stuff were all welfare based, but some of the people that were actually sent for the march specifically had rights based language.
Herbert Bongo is saying not all the marchers were vegan, but I expect you'd expect that, and you know that they
No,
would
no,
be.
absolutely, they weren't. No, no.
Yeah, but I mean they'd be welcome though, wouldn't they?
Yeah, of course, of course. It's a great day for outreach. I mean, there were a very small contingent. I didn't see them on the day, but I've seen them now in the videos and the photos. There were a very small group representing the Millions and Marshall, two dogs.
Oh yeah, I saw a reference to that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't see them. I mean, I missed a lot of actually who were there in the flesh, so to speak, because I was right in the very front. So I saw quite a lot of people afterwards in the Parliament Square, but I didn't get to see everyone during the march because I was literally right at the front, and obviously it went a long way back.
I showed the photograph of that picture of you at the front, and Jennifer goes, "Oh, isn't he tall?"
I didn't realise how tall you were, though, Roger.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why. I suppose it's hard to tell when you just like sat down on the camera or whatever. But yeah,
We're all the same size sat down, aren't we? This is the thing.
Well, that's what Wendy did. She said, "Well, I'm looking forward to meeting you in London because I want to find out if you've really got legs."
And you really wear trousers, or you're
and
just
if you
not,
ever wear
you're not
trousers
naked
so
from
much,
the
you
waist
just wear
down.
a shirt.
Yeah, I had my visitor trousers on.
But yeah, I don't think there's been any questions in the chat unless I've missed any.
No. Hey, here's one, Ronnie, for you, because I don't know. By the time we got round to Christmas, my cell was just full of Christmas cards, you know, on the walls, and we weren't allowed blue tack, so we used to use toothpaste. Now, I think I've mentioned that before, but you had blue tack, didn't you, Ronnie?
I can't. I honestly can't remember. I think
I know the toothpaste. Every now and again, everything fell down because it kind of dried out and stuff.
I think possibly. I think possibly in because I had when I was in Long Martin, I had every single, because what I did, I had this kind of routine of every day sticking something on the wall. It was just like a kind of, you know, something I got into.
Your version of the dirty protest.
Yeah, because I've been in there so long. Eventually, every single, every single inch of the wall was covered by. It would be either a card or a photograph or a poster, because I was allowed to have posters sent in, and even on the ceiling, I had posters on the ceiling as well. And I'm not sure. I think they must have been stuck on with something rather stronger than toothpaste, because I don't think toothpaste would have held.
Were you allowed chewing gum?
Yeah, I don't think it would have worked on.
No, I think maybe I
on the
was
ceiling.
able to have to get blue tack, because it said, and prisoners would come and visit my cell. They'd say, "Can we come and have a look at your cell? We've heard about your cell." You know, being
That's what happened to me. And around Christmas time, because somebody had sent me this big poster of Zippy from Rainbow, and they scrolled on it, kind of, please get out of there soon, Roger, or something like that. You know, in this kind of weird writing and all that kind of stuff. And this guy is kind of like looking around the cell, and then he sees this big poster, and he goes, "Oh, did he send you that?" And he thought Zippy had sent me.
You got some proper fan mail from Zippy.
Yeah.
Well, I had a letter. I got someone to send me a letter that was made out that it came from Buckingham Palace and signed by the Queen. Because what happened when I was in Channings Wood, there was a guy in a cell the opposite side of the corridor from me who'd been a captain in the Navy, and I think he had some personal problems, and he'd taken to drink and to stealing and stuff like that, and but he'd been a captain, you see, and he was a bit he's a bit off his head, this guy. Well, very really. And he would go around. I'm the highest ranking officer on this landing. I'm a captain. Don't you know I'm a captain? You see.
Good job, Paul Watson wasn't there.
Yeah, it was. Well, one prisoner said, "No, you're not. You're not the highest ranking officer on this landing."
Was the general?
Which mean, of course, he said, "Well, there's a general on this landing." Because, at my trial, I was called the general, wasn't I? And he said, "Who is it? Who is it?"
That would have pissed him off, wouldn't it?
It's Ronnie here, you see. And he looked at me and he said, "He's not a general. He's just a cabin boy." And he said, "No, he is a general." And I said, I am. I said, and he absolutely loved the Queen, and was always going on about the royal family. And I said, oh, I'm really good friends with the Queen. No, you're not. You don't know the Queen. The Queen wouldn't have anything to do with you, somebody like you. I said, yeah, she does. She's a good friend. No, she's not. So what I did was I got one of my friends to forge a letter from Buckingham Palace saying, and send it in, and it was obviously got through the censors, and it said, "Dear Ronnie, so sorry to hear that you're in prison, and I hope when you come out, you can come to one of
Yeah,
my gardens."
not like she couldn't do anything about it. Right?
Yeah, when you get out, you can come and stab one of our hunts.
When you're released, please come to one of my garden parties where you'll be the guest of honour. You're sincerely Elizabeth, like. And I got this letter, and I showed him this letter. He went berserk. He started ranting and raving and everything. This guy. I'd had a letter from the Queen.
One of the saddest things, I was doing outreach, and this was the time when I was on the run, but I was doing a store. This guy came up, and he was very similar to that, what you're just describing, Ronnie, kind of very kind of pompous and all that kind of stuff. And, oh, well, I know the Prime Minister and I know this and that. And he had this kind of briefcase full of letters from all these famous people. But they were like kind of, thank you for contacting Downing Street, all the best. So they weren't replies. They were just acknowledgements that they
Yeah, like auto replies.
They thought they'd specially written to him. Yeah,
that's right. And so he's going, well, look, this is what Mr. Blair sent back to me and all that. And you didn't know what to do for him, because you didn't want to go, well, that's not actually a reply, mate. But
No.
it was very sad, really.
Yeah, this guy. I mean, really, he kind of needed to be in a place where he could have been looked after, because what he did was he started stealing things. This captain guy started stealing things in the prison. He stole stuff. He went over the education block and he stole things like rulers and stuff. And he stole a pair of scissors from the prison, where the prison officers had an office on the.
No, you wouldn't get away with that, would you?
He stole a pair of prison. You see, so in the he was always having run-ins, and they raided his cell, and they found a load of stones that he collected. And they found a hit list of prison officers. He had a hit list. And he didn't know the names of the prison officers, but he had descriptions like bald-headed one, tall bald-headed one, with the moustache. And he described them all. And he had a hit list, and he was going to carry out an attack on the prison officers with all these stones that he collected. So they ended up just locking him in the cell. It was an open prison, and you only get really locked up at night. They ended up locking him in a cell and then transferring him somewhere else, because they found all this kind of.
All right, so
I think he'd be better suited for a prison boat or prison ship.
Yeah. They found this. He was about to carry out.
Set to one of those hulks, they're called. Those. Prison ship,
yeah. They could have. Yeah, he would have been great on a prison. He'd have loved it on a prison ship. He'd have thought he was in control of it.
It'd be like Captain Pugwash, wouldn't it? Kind of.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Masturbates and semen stains.
He shouldn't really be in prison, because obviously he had he was.
Yeah, he needed help more than punishment.
Kind of. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
He's often the way.
Yeah. but there we are. I mean, of course, the other prisoners, it was a great source of amusement to the other prisoners who used to wind him up no end.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we might be done. I don't know. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, I suppose we just want to give a time and date and stuff for Tuesday. And then where are we at from next week? Are we back to...
Yeah, but there's a question here from Urban Bongo to Ronnie. I missed it, but were you in category A?
Well, yes, I was in category A for a few weeks when I got sentenced to 10 years, and that was in Armley Prison in Leeds. So I was put on category A. But it was only really, category A prisoners are people that are meant to be dangerous to the public. I wasn't a danger to the public, but I think because they wanted to keep the cells full, because it kept it gave a job to prison officers, because there was a lot of prisoners officers needed to kind of watch.
And you weren't allowed to exercise with the main crew.
No, you know, as I said, you exercised with other category A prisoners in this kind of big metal cage.
But it's not as though you had to do exercise on your own or anything.
Oh no, you did have exercise with them, but I mean, some of them were right, but like kind of really quite dangerous characters. I said earlier about the guy that just killed somebody because they were there, you know. And he said, I think I might have killed another bloke in London, but I didn't hang around to find out. It was that it just didn't. He had no. You know, and I said, was that bloke there as well? He said, yeah, I was in a bad mood. There was a bloke coming the opposite direction, and
It could have been total bullshit, though, Ronnie.
Well, I know the one that he was on remand for wasn't. It was a very high profile case where this retired school teacher had been killed on Christmas Eve, and that was, you know, he did actually kill that guy. For which he got sent to Rampton, the secure mental, it's a psychiatric unit, isn't it?
There was a big criminal from Poland with me, and it's really funny because like he did this language thing because he insisted that some kind of exaggerated kind of word like governor or something meant a swear word in Poland, and so you know, like the prisoners used to call the screws boss and stuff. I used to hate all that, you know, especially when they were like begging for tobacco and stuff. You know, boss this and all that. Or sir. So it is sir or boss, right? And so this guy told me that it was this kind of weird kind of way of saying governor or something. So I started calling the screws governor. You know, and so I would go, you know, is it okay if I go down there, gov? You know, and this kind of stuff. And so I wouldn't say sir or what was the other one? You boss. Know, I wouldn't say those kind of, you know, the boss. I wouldn't say those two. And so I did this short version of a Polish swear word.
Yeah, so, I think I used to call them gov. I think that's what you know. I mean, it would have been even better if I'd known it was a Polish swear word.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't even know if it is. I mean, it's just that this Polish guy said it was. You know. You see, the point is when you hear. When you hear stories, you haven't got a clue whether any of it is true or not.
No, because I mean it's a rumour factory. Because you know a lot of prisoners are like really bored, and so
like your terrible lie about my cardboard telephone, for example, Ronnie.
Well, yes. I mean
that wasn't true, but you insisted. I mean, you told millions of people that was true.
That you had a cardboard telephone. Well, I think you'd have liked to have had a cardboard telephone.
Yeah, but you said that I did have one because I was so into being a press officer. That I used to answer this phone.
But you kept wanting to escape. You're like, you know, all the time you're going, we should escape. We shouldn't tolerate being in here. We should escape. We should organise a helicopter to come.
Yeah, microlight.
Yeah, helicopter to lift us out of prison, like, you know. Yeah, I mean,
well, at least they hadn't given up, eh, Ronnie?
No, that's true. I thought it was quite amusing, really. I thought, how can we, you know, we could have tried to tunnel out, although we were on about the third floor, weren't we?
Yeah, that wouldn't have been so great, would it?
Wouldn't have been that good tunneling down into someone else's cell. So excuse me while I tunnel down through your floor as well.
And it wouldn't have been much fun in the sewerage system either, would it?
Not really, no. We should have gone upwards, really, up onto the roof and done it that way.
Yeah, well, that's when you need your helicopter then.
It kind of is. I should have organised a helicopter to come really onto the exercise yard. But the funny thing one funny thing, a memory I have of Hull was though you always get a guy in prison who sings on the exercise yard. You know, this is one, you know, an experience I had quite frequently in several prisons I've been in, like especially like the local prisons where you have the kind of the actual yard and that. You get a guy that would sing, you see, and they'd sing mostly it'd be Tom Jones songs like Delilah and all that kind of thing. And there was a guy in Hull that was the singer, the prison yard singer, and he'd sing.
Well, it's not unusual for people to have Tom Jones songs, is it?
No, it definitely isn't.
Oh, why?
Dear idea, it should be. You're wasted, Roger. Wasted on here. Or you should be. Anyway, he'd stand, and the prison officer would tolerate it. This guy would stand in the middle singing. You know, he was an elderly guy. But then another guy came, another singer came, another singing guy came, right?
Like Julian Banjos, was it?
Well, no, he was singing, and I don't know if the other guy was singing Tom Jones as well. But they both started singing at the same time. And they ended up fighting. They ended up fighting for who would be and
The problem is, Ronnie, they hadn't come up with X Factor then.
yeah, the Screws had to split them up because they were fighting.
They not had a phone in a vote.
they should have taken turns, and we should have
Yeah,
all
they should have all
voted
both auditioned, and you could have had like a panel, and then the rest of the people could have like voted with their
Yeah, you could,
slides on
you
it.
could hold up signs with
They
5
should
on
have
it.
signs, yeah. But they both, they fought each other for the right to sing on the exercise yard. Yeah, I mean, it was highly entertaining. Highly entertaining.
Because I bet everyone was happier with the fight than the singing.
Yeah, I think, everyone enjoyed that more than the singing. But it's mad, but it's crazy. There's loads of crazy shit in prison. Honestly, it's really, it's kind of mad. A lot of it, really, to be honest.
Well, I tell you what. I mean, one serious note, of course, is you do get the impression or the feeling, a distinct feeling that it's like a world within a world, because what goes on in there, people on the outside just don't have a clue.
No, that's true.
And there's no way really of kind of telling them either, because it's kind of things can happen, and you can be disappeared or you can come to harm and everything, and then the prison authorities can just come up with a tale.
Oh yes, I think they frequently do. I mean, from what I've seen of prisons now, the glimpses I've caught of prisons from the TV, and I've got a friend who's a social worker in prisons as well. I think they're worse now than they were when we were in. I think they're actually worse because a lot of them have become privatised, and the ones that are still
Yeah, I've heard that, and of course
they've been the subject to cuts. You see, because
it's like hunting, though, isn't it? There's always some hunts with a reputation of being rough, and there was always some prison. I mean, I tell you what, I wouldn't like to go to prison in Ireland. I'll tell you that.
Well, I think to be honest,
reputation.
there's a lot. If I was going, probably the best places to go to prison are probably Holland or Scandinavia. I would think. I mean, I think there's a lot of countries in the world where the prisons are far worse. Like USA, wouldn't fancy being in prison in the USA. To be honest,
well, we were talking to Jake, weren't we? Jake Conroy, the cranky vegan, and he was done for 4 years, and he was saying that the real problem with the American prison system is that you've got the gang system in it.
Yes.
So it's all segregated by color and stuff, and
yes.
Hispanics, kind of African American.
I don't know whether you're able to sort of stay out of that. I mean, I kind of and it obviously would have been the same for you, Roger. That you kind of stay out of you sort of stay out of the loop of the normal prison behaviour. Like a lot of it's surrounding drugs and it's surrounding tobacco and stuff like that. And kind of what you do is
we weren't involved with that, and
also involved in that. When you're
I don't know about you, but both the prisoners and the Screws used to. They kind of regarded me as a political prisoner, but the system formally didn't. They weren't allowed to.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I had quite a number of Screws say to me that they didn't think I should be in prison. I did have that. Throughout the times that I was in there.
Yeah, you weren't kind of the prisoner type and everything.
No, but you just. But if you stay out of, if you stay out of the drugs thing, you stay out of the tobacco thing, then because most of the the problems between prisoners revolve around that, then you don't get problems. You don't get into problems with other prisoners. You just keep yourself to yourself. Get on. I just got on with studying. Got on with keeping fit. Got on with studying. And
Yeah, and then I mean, like I said, I kind of was lucky in the sense that there was one guy who kind of acted as a bit of a minder for me, because he kind of took a shine to me, and he was like the the cock of the the wing type of thing. So he was the the main kind of prisoner on the wing. And on a Friday when you get the newcomers, it was that real kind of pecking order thing. So what you get is all the newcomers would come on the wing, and they'd be doing all the kind of walking like John Wayne to be look kind of tough and everything. And all the ones that had been there were kind of checking out the newcomers, and they were all giving each other the eye. Now a lot of them knew each other and everything, but if they didn't, there was potential for trouble, because it's almost like the alpha males would seek each other out type of thing. And there was one when I was in the cell of this one guy, one of the alpha males, if you like, because I used to get called in because he couldn't finish the Southern crossword, and so I used to help him finish the Southern crossword, because he would go another name for boat, begin with S, 4 letters, and I'd go ship, and he'd go, oh yeah, that's it, and so he was really impressed with the fact that I could.
Yeah, you helped him with the difficult ones.
Yeah, the difficult ones, yeah, and then this new guy came in, and so. He was sat behind his desk, little ditty desk. He was sat behind that, looking out at the door. I was sat on his bed to the side, and this new guy came in, and there was a pile of tobacco on his desk. And the new guy goes in and says, you couldn't spare a bit of snout, could you, mate? And the guy goes, sorry, mate, I haven't got any. And so the new guy looked down at this pile of snout, right? And so it was like a Hollywood film. And then he looked back up to just enough for one, mate. And he goes, well, I told you I haven't got any. And so this guy looked down again at this pile of snout. And I was thinking, somebody's got to happen now. There's either going to be a big set 2, or the new guy is going to back down, and the new guy backed down. But it felt real touch and go at one point.
Yeah. Oh yes, yes. I mean, that was it was always tobacco the big thing, because that's the currency in prison, isn't it? As well, and I mean, they spend, most prisoners spend pretty much all their earnings on tobacco, don't they?
Yeah.
That's what you.
And the ones that were in induction, I mean, they were in a right state, because they weren't allowed tobacco in induction. So by the time they came onto the wings, they were desperate for a smoke, and so there was potential for trouble straight off.
Yeah, I mean, I actually gave up smoking in prison. I was I used to smoke. I wasn't a heavy smoker, but I did used to smoke, and I decided to embark on a fitness regime.
I wonder if you're the only one that ever done that in the history of the
probably so. Yeah, probably so. But you see, it was kind of easy, because you see, you could only go to the canteen, the prison shop, once a week to buy tobacco. So if you didn't buy any, then you had to wait another week. You'd be a week without it, and your abilities to be able to scrounge tobacco off other people were really limited, So it was kind of, that kind of sort of made it easier to give up, I think, in a sense. And plus I was determined. I thought, I've got a 10-year sentence. I'm going to take this as an opportunity to get like really fit, and that's kind of what I did. And that included like giving up tobacco and not having sugar in my tea and things like that.
Did you ever go down the gym?
Oh, yes. I kind of. I did.
I would imagine that's one of the worst places, isn't it?
Well, the thing about the gym is there's a big thing about weightlifting.
Yeah.
Prisoners go down there and they try and push up these really heavy weights, and after they've done it, they'll smoke a cigarette. So they've got a double whammy there for your heart, because like straining and trying to push up really heavy weights is not good for your heart. It's bad for your heart. Like light weights and lots of repetitions, that's good. That's good for your heart, but not the really straining heavyweights, which they do. And then also the smoking afterwards. You'd see them out, see them outside the gym. They've just had this big weightlifting session, and they're all smoking there. But I used to do things like I used to play badminton. I used to do a lot of running. Like kind of at Long Lartin, there was we had exercise on it was walking around a football pitch. like it was on on grass, and so and a few of the prisoners used to run, and I used to run round and
Yeah,
stuff
I
like that. I
started
used to
doing
do
that.
that kind
There
of.
was
I used to
also
do
a
that.
lifer who used to play badminton against two opponents, and like he would always win. He would just like have these two people
Oh,
running around,
yeah, I had that experience. I used to play badminton a lot in Channings Wood, and I used to try and run around as much as I could during the badminton to to like keep myself fit. And there was this really elderly Indian guy said, could could he have a game of badminton with me? And I thought, blimey, he's like kind of I don't know whether he's even fit enough to play badminton. But he just stood in the middle of the court, and I was just running around everywhere. And I think he absolutely slaughtered me. This guy, he didn't even move. He didn't even move.
Well, going back to the
Yeah.
weights, one of the most embarrassing things in my life was the fact that I was in the cell once with this guy called Moran Nuds. That was his surname, Moran Nuds, and he was a weightlifter, big massive chest. And he said to me, "I ought to be a weightlifter because I've got a very prominent rib cage, and so he said if you were to put muscle on that, you'd look really big. Yeah, if you had those big kind of pecs or
Yeah.
whatever." And so he persuaded me to go down to the gym on this occasion. So I got onto this bench press, the one that you push up on, Ronnie.
Yeah.
I couldn't even push up the bar without any weight on it.
Yeah. I think I was very similar. Yeah.
It was so embarrassing because I was always a bit worried because I'd come off a motorbike in the 1970s and I had an operation. And I've still got like a pin in my elbow, which means that I can't straighten one arm.
Yeah.
And like with lifting and that, you lock your arm.
You do,
I
yeah.
can't actually lock it.
Yeah.
So it means that you'd have to rely on muscle all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So I was a bit worried about that anyway. But I couldn't even lift the goddamn thing off my
No.
chest.
But it's not good for you, that kind of weightlifting anyway. No.
Well, it wasn't good for my ego, I'll tell you that.
No. but
Well, at least I suppose from the rest of the prisoners' point of view, you weren't really considered a threat either then.
no, you
Like-
just weren't part of their you just weren't part of their culture. You're outside of
Yeah, well, I wasn't because I know one of Moran Nudd's mate goes, "Get him off that bench, will you, mate? Kind of get him out of here." Talk about me.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I just kind of scuttled back to my cell, I think.
Although when I was in Channings Wood, there was a guy who was vegan. I think he was in for robbery. I think he did a really vegan thing actually. He robbed betting shops. It was he was doing, I thought, how long he was doing, 6 years, I think, something like that. And he was a weightlifter, and for his weight, he was his weight category, he was the second best weightlifter in the country. And he used to go to weightlifting contests, and he'd have a prison officer would go with him to a weightlifting contest, somewhere else in the country, and they'd go out for a day or make stuff like that, and for him to they allowed him to take part in these competitions. But he refused to wear. They wear a belt, don't they? When they're doing.
Yeah.
He'd refused to wear a belt because they were
That's
leather.
dangerous, though, isn't it?
And I was really, really worried about him. But he managed to get one. He eventually managed to get one that wasn't leather, non-leather one. But he would.
But couldn't you rupture something doing that, Ronnie?
You can, yeah. It's not recommended. But he what he used to, because what happened on the people on the the vegan diet, we'd get a goodie bag because like for instance, the tea they'd give you in prison was already had the cow's milk in it and stuff, and so we'd get given things to make our own tea bags and soy milk. But we'd also get stuff like, there'd be peanut butter, wouldn't there? There'd be yeast extracts. There'd be a bag of peanuts, and there'd be all these things in this goodie bag that they'd give us.
He insisted on fair trade tea at one point as well, didn't he?
Yeah, we did, yeah. But what he used to do, he used to buy it and what would happen is a lot of prisoners that kind of weren't vegan, they would they would want to go on the vegan diet to get a goodie bag, so they could sell the contents of the goodie bag for tobacco. And so there was a time where you were only recognised as a vegan in prison if you're a member of the Vegan Society. So you get all these criminals joining the Vegan Society, so they could claim to be a vegan, so they could get the vegan diet, so they could get a goodie bag to sell for tobacco. And he used to buy because he needed protein, to build up all these big muscles for his weightlifting. He used to buy loads of peanut butter and loads of peanuts off people, from the ones that had the goodie bags. This guy, the weightlifting guy.
There's always a way.
It sure is, yeah. I mean, so what did they used to get, like, sent a badge in or something that would prove it?
It was a card. I think it was a red card, wasn't it, from the vegan?
Yeah, it was a deep red card, and
Yeah.
I would tell the tale that we said to because people were starting to get arrested quite frequently, and we said to the Vegan Society, look, as soon as somebody gets arrested, send them the card, and we'll sort you out later, kind of thing, with the money. And they refused to do it. They said, no, we have to have the money first, and all this kind of stuff. So we thought, sod that, and we forged their membership card.
But you see, it was at the time, like the Vegan Society, really, they were really at one time the largest criminal organisation in the world, because of the number of prisoners that joined the Vegan Society to get the card. I mean, eventually that all came to an end, and if you go in prison now and just say you're a vegan, you get the vegan diet. It's the same as...
Yeah.
Their membership must have plummeted, Ronnie.
The membership must have plummeted after that. Yeah, that was a bad decision, wasn't it, for them? But they did a lot of work. They actually did a lot of work for vegans in prison at one time, and campaigned for to get a proper a proper diet suitable for vegans, and then I think that was taken over by an organisation called the Vegan Prisoners Support Group, who kind of took that further and kind of got the Home Office to recognise.
I had to get my name taken off of that because again because I got the kids and all that. But I got called into the Screws office, and because I was on the prison support thing, I was getting loads and loads of letters, but also I was getting all the magazines, like the RSPCA magazine and Animal Aid and all this kind of stuff. And so the Screw says, it's going to damage your parole chances if you keep still getting all this militant
RSPCA stuff.
Yeah, and I said, no, that's Animal Aid. And I said, this is RSPCA. This is not militant. And he said, well, you might not know that, and you might be able to tell me that, but the parole board ain't going to know that. So you're better off taking your name off the list to stop getting that kind of stuff. So reluctantly, I had to do that. It was a real drag.
So did you get parole in the end? Did you get early release?
I did, yeah. So out of the 4 years,
You have to put up your connections with the militant RSPCA, Roger.
Yeah,
I know, yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah. To the terrorist Animal Aid organisation. No, that's probably why I never got parole.
There is a quick question in the chat for the pair of you.
Yeah, well, this is the last one because I know.
Yeah, I was going to say. We'll call it.
Yeah.
So, do you feel that getting jailed was worth it because of the work you were doing for the animal?
Well, you can never say that because you kind of the door slams and you think, well, that's the end of me doing stuff for a while now, kind of thing.
I mean, if you sort of take it as a whole, like kind of, it wasn't just us that were put in prison. I think probably hundreds of activists were put in prison, for mainly for ALF activities, but for other direct action as well. And there are some that I had a 10-year sentence. There's some that have had longer than that. And I think if you kind of and that sounds like a really heavy price to pay for all those people, including ourselves. But when you think of what the ALF achieved in terms of the you know, the massive reduction in animal experiments that occurred, you know, while the ALF was particularly active against the vivisection industry, and the sort of decimation of the fur trade that, you know, that kind of, you know, followed on from ALF actions, then, you know, it could be argued, yeah, it kind of was, it sort of was worth it in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, I would also say that potentially, especially yourself, Ronnie, with a couple of sentences before that, it's kind of like it puts your name and cements your name on the map, which also potentially inspires others to fill in the work. So as you say, the door shuts and you're not doing anything, but people that are inspired by seeing what you've done and hearing about it through the media, etc., that's the consolation that comes with it.
Yeah,
and obviously it's a time for you to learn too, I suppose.
I think also.
No, I don't regret it. Don't get me wrong. But I just think it's like an enforced break from activism, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
it kind of is. I mean, I used to write to people. I mean, obviously, you have to be careful what you put in letters because, you know, they can be read by the prison authorities. But people that were involved in sort of lawful activities, I used to encourage them. I used to, you know, try and give them advice. And I kind of, I mean, I was even involved in starting off like a kind of animal liberation magazine in prison, you know, Archangel, for instance. And I mean, eventually I kind of wasn't able to do so much for that, but that ran for many years after that, as well. And that sort of came out of me, you know, virtually the whole of the first edition I wrote in prison, and kind of, you know, passed out the articles on visits, which I was actually stopped from doing eventually, but then other people kind of took it over, people on the outside. So you can still do stuff. You can still do stuff in prison, but it's obviously much more limited than what you can achieve outside.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense.
Swings and roundabouts.
But yeah, I suppose two last things before you go. Firstly, I think it's incredibly, again, inspiring to hear that not only kind of were you already put away for your services to the animals, but even in restrictions to like, I wasn't sure if the food was definitely vegan, so I swerved it. I just think when I speak to people on a daily basis in 2024 that tell me that going vegan's too difficult or that it's too hard or any of those things, it just kind of, it cements that if you make the connection and you understand the kind of ethical wrong in this, you will do whatever it takes always, regardless of the situation. If you're still talking about it's too difficult, it's too hard, it's too expensive, you're still thinking about you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people approach it in the wrong way. You know, the reason for becoming vegan is so to oppose the exploitation and oppression of other animals. Indeed, I'd say all exploitation and oppression, but, you know, particularly focused on our fellow animals because they're the massively, overwhelmingly the kind of the main victims of that. That's why you do it. That's why you do it. You don't become vegan because it's easy to buy, because you've got vegan options in restaurants, or because you can buy, you know, vegan friendly versions of sausages in the supermarket. That's not the reason for becoming vegan. The reason for becoming vegan is because you don't want to be part of. You want to oppose, you know, oppression and exploitation. That's the reason for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Often the focus is on, you know, we've got a big focus now on, like, you know, let's campaign for better vegan options in restaurants, and let's campaign for, you know, more vegan stuff in supermarkets, like as if, like, you know, that's gonna cause more people to become vegan, but that isn't the reason for being vegan. Yeah, the reason for being vegan isn't because oh great, you know, it's easier for me to eat out or to buy stuff from the supermarket. I mean, you could always buy stuff from the supermarket anyway, because the whole all vegetables, all nuts, all pulses, all fruit is suitable for vegans. That's always been there. We've always had that. You know what I mean? And I think this is that often that it's kind of, the true reason for becoming vegan, or really the only reason for becoming vegan, is the philosophy, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's subscribing to that philosophy, and then doing our utmost to live according to that philosophy.
Yeah, and I mean, just to kind of put it into perspective, you've got the recent so-called ex-vegan celebrity, Peter Dinklage, who said it was too difficult to maintain being vegan whilst he was on set all the time in 2020. But yet you two managed to maintain being vegan in prison in the 80s.
That is, I mean...
So that's the difference between connecting with the why and understanding that this isn't about you and how difficult it might be. It's about the victims and understanding that.
Absolutely.
And,
what you're saying there is totally bullshit. However difficult it is to live as vegan in practical terms, however difficult it is to eat out, which it's a piece of piss these days. I mean, certainly here in the UK.
Yeah.
Right? However difficult it is to kind of to obtain. I mean, it's never been difficult to obtain food suitable for vegans, because I've said we've always had those things, right? And what people are talking about is like a burger that looks like a burger made of meat, or those things. That's kind of what people are going on about, and they think. But the thing is, however difficult any of that is, it's nothing compared to what the animals go through if we're not vegan. And that's what you think about. That's what you think about. And it was a pain in the ass. I remember when almost all bread wasn't even vegetarian, let alone being suitable for vegans.
Yeah.
And when you kind of, we ended up not even being able to eat peanut butter because we found out they put beef fat in it, which they did. A lot of products these days that contain vegetable oil. Back in the day, I'm talking about the 70s, early 1970s, when I first went vegan. It was animal fat, and we were constantly finding out about things we couldn't eat. But we persevered because we were doing it because we didn't want to contribute to the exploitation of other animals, and so we stuck with it.
Absolutely.
That
just shows the difference. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's an attitude that's very, very sadly missing these days.
And it brings us on, I suppose, nicely to our show on Tuesday, where we look at the current sort of views, beliefs, and kind of, I suppose, claims making of our movement, because a lot of people now don't hold those particular values. They think that they do, but they don't.
I think,
And the first time they reach a hurdle, you see them kind of thinking, well, maybe this isn't the be all and end all, and it's because they're still thinking about this from their own perspective.
Yes, yeah. I mean, our movement is way not radical enough, in terms of its thinking, to be honest. But that's something we'll
just discuss. Yeah, Roger, do you want to do the advertisement slot? You've been quiet for a little bit, that's all.
No, go ahead.
Is it 7 or 8 Tuesday?
7.
So it's 7 p.m. on Roger's YouTube channel, which is Roger Yates on YouTube, and we'll be discussing essentially, all things National Animal Rights March and the claims making of the movement. So the best place to watch it, as always, is actually on the YouTube channel. So you get the live chat and you can communicate with us and ask the questions and that sort of stuff. But it'll be available to watch, I'm sure, as always, on Facebook.
Yeah, it'll be on the Vegan Review and my Facebook channel and my YouTube channel.
Cool. Yeah, well, we will see you then. And thanks so much, guys. Inspiration as always. And thank you, everyone in the chat. Take care.
Cheers, everyone.
Okay, night, everyone.
Night. Bye-bye then. Bye.